Recently, I decided to take our first-person game and make it third-person. Now, with that comes a lot of issues because, well, in first-person, you only need to see your hands. And in third-person, well, animations make up a lot of the gameplay and how you perceive things, such as how the spells feel, the weight of those spells you're attacking. It just changes things completely. So moving from first person to third person, well, it's a lot more difficult than you might think. Now, in our last video, during our showcase of the movement, you might have noticed that the gameplay felt a little, well, stiff. And that's because the animations, well, sucked, to be honest with you. So recently I've been spending a bunch of time just trying to update the fidelity to really give the game a good feeling to it, to make it feel a little bit more unique. So let's take a look at what we got so far. The first thing I did was actually change the walking animation. You can see it's a lot more bouncy. It's got a little more of a stylized feel to it than the old one. The other one just kind of felt a little stiff and, I don't know, just felt a little bland. But this one's just got a lot more character to it. And also this guy, I don't know why I'm just noticing this now, but this guy has got the cake. Boy, look at that thing. Look at that thing. It's kind of hard to see because of the darkness. Anyway, so yeah, besides our boy being caked up here, something we did to really add a lot more weight to the character's movement is use additive animations to give it that weight when you're shifting directions. So as I'm walking, you might notice that when I turn my camera, my character kind of leans in that angle, or in that direction that I'm moving in. And you can see he's even bending at the ankles as well, so his feet are still remaining flat to the ground. And this might not seem like something that would really make a difference, but if you take a look at the older clips where I'm kind of running and turning around, it just makes a big difference in how the weight of the character feels. And I'm gonna say that a lot because I don't know how else to say what I'm trying to say. So anyway, yeah, so you can just see it just feels a lot higher quality when turning and walking around. It's also for when you're sprinting as well. And this was actually pretty simple to implement. It's literally just adding like an angled pose. So it's literally just the character posing, leaning in a certain direction, and it just kind of adds it on top of the running animation or the walking animation, depending on your amount of acceleration that you're having. Blah, blah, blah. Jargon. Anyway, yeah, point is, it just adds a lot higher quality of a feeling to it, even though you'd think that it might not. And that's kind of going to be the theme of today's talk. There's just like a lot of little things that add up and make it have a higher fidelity. And a good example of that is when you're coming out of a roll or the starting to sprint animation, things like that. Now, let's talk about jumping before we get into those, okay? So jumping animations are pretty much the same. The difference is the landing. When you do a single normal jump or when you fall from a short height, you kind of just do a small stumble when you land, just kind of like a, right? You just, anyway, yeah, so you just do like a small stumble. But when you fall from a bigger height, you have a little bit more weight to it. I'm not quite satisfied with it, to be honest with you, but that's the idea. Basically, the higher the fall, the more weight to your landing, essentially. Something I want to avoid is, and just because this is something I absolutely hate in games, when you fall from a really high fall and you land and you're just like kind of stuck on the ground for a moment. I know it's probably a little more realistic or whatever. I don't care because it feels like ass, so yeah, whatever, I don't care. Post-nut John A here. I should clarify that while yes, I do hate when you get staggered on the ground from falling from heights or whatever, it's mostly because when games do this, they don't implement any way to counteract it. So usually you just fall, you hit the ground, you take the stun, you're stunned, and then that's it. And it's GG, have fun, bro. But when you have games that do have some way to counteract it, for example, in Nier Automata, if you dash right before you hit the ground, you can avoid that damage. Or some games will let you grapple, like First Descendant, or in First Descendant you can shoot your gun and it'll keep you from doing it. Things like that. I like when there's some sort of skill aspect to avoiding that damage. Anyway, so yeah, to me, feeling is more important. Because sometimes, man, oh my god, some of the stuff and animations that they put in games just drives me absolutely bonkers. I'm done rambling about that. So yeah, another thing we've added was the additional transitions between different movements. So for example, when you're coming out of a roll into a sprint, now it does this little stumble. See where he's kind of like, it's like when you're watching like a track meet person, the race is about to start, they kind of come up from that down crouched position. That's kind of what we got going here. It's just an animation that goes between the actual roll ending and your sprint starting again. I just spit. Okay, anyway, and you can see again, it's a bunch of little things that you don't think would really matter. You can really see it from behind, actually. You can see his arm kind of swing up as you come out of the roll. Yeah, I like it. It makes a pretty big difference in terms of weight and feeling. And of course, we also added a animation for when you're stopping your movement. So, okay, well, not when you're coming from a walk stop, but when you're coming from a sprint to a stop, you can see he kind of has this like little foot brake stagger, and it's like a deceleration thing as well. So you kind of slowly go into it. It's not like you just instantly stop, right? You're kind of slide on the ground a little bit. Yeah, that was more than just animation. And that's something you'll notice too when it comes to animations. A lot of times you have to kind of update how the movement actually works to make an animation fit well if you want it to make sense. Because sometimes you'll just end up with weird things that just doesn't feel right with the movement, because if he just came to an instant stop while during that animation, it would just feel not right. You got to have that deceleration to have that break in. And even you'll notice too, when I come to the stop, you'll see his little I mean, you can kind of see it already. There's like that little dust particles coming up from his feet, and when you stop, it adds to that effect, right? So yeah, again, it's all about just conveying a feeling of weight. Really, that's really what it comes down to. Weight, gravity, physics, acceleration, all that science shit that, you know, probably most people don't care about. But yeah, it does make a difference in how it feels. Another thing I did was change the roll animation itself. I mean, you probably won't notice a big difference, but I wanted to have a roll that kind of looked more like he was jumping into it, kind of like a dive, right? And later on, you can kind of see when you're actually on a target, you kind of do this like dash thing. It's a little buggy right now because the targeting is a little weird. But I haven't quite implemented that yet. Oh my goodness, I cannot talk. But the idea is to have your rolls change to like a dash type of thing when you're actually targeting something, or when you have a target, to give it that kind of like type of feel. You know, I don't know how else to explain it. A good example is Nier Automata. When you're actually in combat and you're kind of like dashing around, you almost feel like a ninja or something, right? Or in Naraka Blade Point, it's the same thing. You're kind of dashing around, especially when you're using like a dagger, and you're just, yeah, it just kind of gives you that agile feeling rather than just doing a basic roll around an enemy all the time. And it just kind of, you know, every game does that. So I kind of wanted to make it a little more interesting. We're not quite there yet with the dashing. We'll talk about that in the combat video. Okay, now for the big boy. This is the big one. In the last video, I talked about walls. There's a lot of wall stuff going on in this game, which may change. I may have to cut down a little bit on it. We'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that more in the combat video. One of the biggest issues, and probably the reason why I started working on updating the animation fidelity, was because all the wall movement just looked bad. I kept the actual wall run itself. The wall run is still the same. Okay, well, he freezed out there. Just ignore that. That didn't actually happen, all right? There's still some bugs, clearly, that needs to be worked on. But yeah, I kept the wall running animation itself because I thought it looked fine enough. And the wall jump animation, it's all right. It's all right to me. I like it enough, I think. I'll probably update it later on, but it's just not a priority. But the big thing that I changed was the actual wall run itself. Or I'm sorry, not the wall run, the wall climbing itself. So before, it was like this weird, creepy Spider-Man crawl up the wall type of thing. Now it's more of a run up the wall. Now how it works is, as soon as you stop holding your forward input, you actually come to a stop and hang onto the wall, and it does this blend transition where before you would kind of just instant grab onto the wall and you're just standing holding it like this weird, again, Spider-Man crawly boy position. But now I changed it to be a little bit more of a natural one-handed position, and there's an in-between animation from when you're climbing to when you're actually just hanging there, and you're kind of like switching hands, yeah, and rising your foot up on the wall. I just think that adds way more to the fidelity of things. And before we had a grapple, so I'll show you. I changed the grapple. It's not a grapple anymore. It's kind of like a flash ability charge thing. I'm still messing around with things, but yeah, so oh, sorry, it's a little bit laggy, but yeah, you can see you kind of like grab onto the wall when you do this air dash and actually hit it, right? Anyway, yeah, that's the idea. That in-between animation from climbing or dashing into the wall hang, essentially, that between animation, oh my god, it made such a huge difference. It kind of took a while to get right, but I think it looks pretty good. The way the wall running or wall climbing works, I'm just going to keep confusing those, so, you know, don't mind me. But anyway, the way the wall climbing works is as soon as you let go of your forward input, you come to this stop, right, and you're just kind of hanging there. Now, if you try to hit forward input again, it won't let you do anything. Now, there is a reason for this, and that's because one of the things I hate about a lot of wall climbing games is if you're just like holding W, it just feels so boring, right? So I wanted to make it a little more interesting, and that's why you have this kind of like hop dash up the wall thing. So when you come to a stop, you have to press the space bar, and then you'll do a little dash up, and then you'll continue into a run, and eventually it'll stop you again, and you have to do it again. This just makes it a little bit more interactive and a little more interesting. So it's not just boring, especially if you have a tall wall you're trying to scale. You're not just T-posing through the air. You're not just, you know, you're not just sitting there holding the W key, because that's, well, quite frankly, fucking boring. That's the big thing with the wall hang. And of course, there's the mantle that you just saw, which is like this flip thing. I'm actually not very happy with it. I don't like it. The reason I'm not happy with it just feels a little jank. I mean, the more you do it, the more jank it looks, right? I'm sure you guys can see it now. The first time it probably looked a little cool, but now it's just like, what is this? It just looks bad. So I'm probably gonna simplify it. I don't get me wrong, I like the idea of doing this whole like flip thing, but I don't know. I kind of just want to simplify things, make things easier. But yeah, that's kind of what we got so far. Let me know your guys' thoughts. I hope you guys like it and like the feel of it. Now, if you really want to show your support, make sure you go over to Steam and add the Resonant Reckoning to your wish list, which the link will be in the description below. Because I'm telling you, that is the best way you can show your support. It will massively help us with the production of this game and help us to get it out on time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and okay, love you, bye.